January 9th, 2025 meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust to order. Thank you, everybody, for coming in. We've got a few things on the agenda tonight, including our goals workshop that I think I'm actually going to move to the end of the agenda, if that's okay with everybody. Get through everything else and then deal with that. First item on the agenda is review draft grant agreement with the Community Preservation Committee. And staff was kind enough to send this over to me earlier in the day or the week. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the CPC grant agreement with the Affordable Housing Trust?
No, I'd be interested to send it to them and see what their thoughts are and then just keep the ball rolling in that direction.
Okay.
Seems pretty straightforward.
Are they?
They mentioned DHCD, so that needs to be updated, but aside from that, seems pretty straightforward.
Yep. Are they generally aware that we're working on something like this?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So one of the members had reached out to me at our last meeting and gave his opinion on it, but the committee itself hasn't had the draft in front of it yet. So,
Okay.
so we need to have that conversation.
Okay. All right. I will entertain a motion to submit this to the CPC for review.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion made and seconded. Let's do it by roll call. Matt?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Ed? Aye. Okay. Motion passes unanimously. All right. Update on lots 74, 52, and 48 High Point Drive. So I got an email earlier in the week from Kathleen in letting me know that the deeds had been recorded
Yes.
and the lots had been moved over to the Affordable Housing Trust. So we are now the proud owners of lots 74, 52, and 48 at High Point Drive.
Great.
So that's the update on that. And without giving anything away, spoiler alert, this is part of what I want to talk about in goals. So we can talk about what we want to do with the High Point lot drives.
Okay.
High Point Drive lots.
Now or in goals?
Goals, Colleen.
Can I ask a question about it?
Sure.
Did we officially figure out which ones were deed restricted?
I think Colleen, I think Kathleen did. Do you know offhand?
It is in the settlement. It's
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. I'm 85% sure that it is 74 and 48.
Okay.
But I reserve the right to be incorrect about that, and will check the settlement agreement to make sure it does say it within.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, she sent me over copies of the deeds, and for whatever reason, like I pulled them up to print them, and I just said, forget it, I don't need to print them because no one will ask questions about that. And then here we are.
You've known me long enough that no one will ask questions. Please, please. I'm gonna ask.
All right. Bill schedule. GSX Solutions LLC draw request number 19, invoice 25-0500-01. Let me pull this up. The packet material for the goals is long. All right. The draw request dated today is for $28,529.70.
Is that the number without the legal fees? Because I see the asterisk, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Because I just realized this. The draw request on the second page is 30516.90. So that's what he was looking for, and it included some legal fees, and we're just authorizing the $28,529.70.
Okay.
I don't think he's doing that deliberately, but he does do that from time to time.
Earlier on there were, but I feel like they'd been pretty
Yeah.
good up until,
Every now and again, he just forgets.
yeah.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to pay draw request number 19 in the amount of $28,529.70.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion concerning the motion? Hearing none, by roll call, all in favor. Matt?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Ed, aye. All right, passes unanimously. I'm just going to sign it. Thinking about it.
So that brings the total we've paid out so far to over $1 million. 1,033,000 and change.
Okay. Couldn't do it without us. Here you go.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
All right. Meeting minutes for December 19th, 2024.
I'll make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes of December 19th, 2024
Second.
as presented.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes? I was not here. Looks pretty good. All right.
We all wore our sweaters. Just saying.
Yeah, sorry about that. It was not strategic miss on my part. All in favor by roll call. Matt?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Ed abstain. Okay. And finally, the 2024 report of the annual report of the Affordable Housing Trust is attached as item number 6 on the packet. Has everybody had a chance to review this?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
I want to thank Amber for putting it together. It looks good.
Yep.
The only question I have, and it just could be the fact that it's house numbers versus lot number, but the High Point Drive numbers,
Oh yeah, don't match up with the lot numbers.
is that what it is? Are we using house numbers in the report? And
Yeah, I
Okay.
think she kept it consistent with 25 Western 17 and 27. Those are the actual
Yeah.
addresses. Yeah.
okay, cool.
Okay. Any comments? Any further comments on the annual report? Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the annual report as drafted.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on the annual report? Hearing none, all in favor by roll call. Matt?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Ed? Aye. Okay. Yes, good work by staff. Thank you very much to Amber for putting that together. Okay. Having moved swiftly through the agenda, we now come to the goals discussion. There's only 4 of us here. Do you guys still want to do it, or do you want to have a fuller house, or do you want to get started?
I'd like to get started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like we've put it off now a few meetings in a row. So.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
like input of other members,
Yeah.
but doesn't mean we can't get started.
I think what we'll do is, we get started with the goals, identify the ones that we want to pursue. We can ask staff to put it together in a memorandum form and then have a further discussion at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that way,
Perfect.
if anybody has any further input. Okay, so just generally, for everybody's edification and for the people who are going to watch at home or maybe on the internet, it's an exciting time to be a member of the Affordable Housing Trust because really never before have we been as productive as we have been over the course of really the past 24 months or so. We have and had money to spend in the effort to promulgate affordable housing in Grafton and support affordable housing. We are increasingly in an environment where people are more aware than ever that there is in fact a housing crisis. This isn't like 2007, this isn't like 2012, where this was sort of a peripheral thing and maybe a niche interest for people who are just sort of into charitable endeavors. This is now a full-blown crisis, and we are the only organization in the community whose responsibility and task is to support affordable housing. And there are other in sort of larger communities. You've got 501c3s and EMB groups that have organized, and that's fantastic. We simply don't have that. So we're also luckily have a fantastic group right now. Everybody's really, I think, engaged. Everybody's really knowledgeable about housing issues. I think people bring a lot of different perspectives to the table, and that's fantastic. And with those different perspectives, I think we have an opportunity to craft goals that will help set up this trust moving forward into the future, no matter who's on it. We have 2 active housing projects. We're very lucky and fortunate that we're going to be breaking ground on one of them. I say we, and the developer is. up at 1727 Upton Street. 25 Worcester Street, although slowly coming along, is coming along, and we have the opportunity to really impact beneficially a really vulnerable group in senior citizens. And in doing that, we are going to be able to free up, not only the new housing that's going to go in at 25 Worcester Street, but get people out of homes where they might be over-homed, and by that I mean they're living in a place that is either too big for them. They want to downsize. There are a lot of maintenance issues involved in maintaining a single-family home, particularly as you get older. So these are all fantastic opportunities, and we also though can't be sitting around waiting for 1727 Upton Street to be built. We can't be sitting around waiting for 25 Worcester Street to be designed and built. We have to be proactive in assessing the housing needs of the community and addressing those. So, given that really before 1727 Upton Street and before 25 Worcester Street, we didn't have a whole lot of experience doing that. We tried. I think now is a good time to talk about where we want to see the trust going in the future, what lessons we've learned over the course of the past 24 months that will help us moving forward. I want to break this up into a few general categories. One, what are our goals? Well, first, when we talk about goals, we want to be able to talk about not only the goal, but also what is the strategy to implement the goal, and what is the action item needed to pursue the strategy, right? And the categories that I wanted to talk about as far as goals go are, number one, development. How can the Affordable Housing Trust actively assist in the development of affordable housing? The second one is funding. What are our goals for funding over the course of the next 12 months and the next 5 years? Outreach. What are our goals for community outreach and education, similarly over the course of the next year to 5 years? And operational. I wanted to talk about what are our operational goals? How can the trust perform its tasks and functions more efficiently and with an eye toward establishing policies and procedures that when new people come on board, they're not reinventing the wheel every single time they come back. So those were the general categories that I wanted to talk about, and staff very helpfully. I didn't think about this until I was driving here. I was like, I wish I had some poster board or some paper, and I walked in here and it was already there. That's fantastic.
It
Really.
was also Amber.
Thank you,
You're gonna
Amber.
go write those
Great.
4 categories up there to get us started?
Yeah, why don't we do this? Why don't we take them 2 at a time? I can do like operational and development, and then when we're done with that, we can start in on outreach and funding. Does that sound good?
I also have another easel in my office. Do you want me to? And
Wait, you
there's
just have
another
your own
board
easel?
there.
What's that?
I have another one, so we can, if we need a third.
Yeah, we can do that. That's fine.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'll
Aggressive
grab
of
it.
us.
Always have easels.
Sorry, Sarah, no easel for you.
Well, it's okay. I have got my notebook. I got my mini easel.
So Dan might be joining us on Zoom a little later. He's got some family stuff going on, but
Sure.
yep.
All right, so what are you gonna put up there?
I'm gonna put operational over here,
All right.
and just don't mind my handwriting.
They're going in the minutes. We're gonna take pictures.
We wanna do development?
Well, I think he picked development, right?
Yeah, you want to do development over there?
Community outreach I have on top of mine. Let's do that,
Outreach, let's do outreach.
'cause I have an idea.
Just one.
So we don't wanna have too many and overwhelm
That's true.
ourselves.
That is true.
Do we need a third, or are we good? Okay. Well, we have it in case.
Thank you.
In case, yeah, this is kind of a weird one.
Oh. No, you're good.
Bent the wrong way. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to talk about operational?
Yeah, let's talk about operational, because I think that'll be helpful.
Okay.
I have a couple of thoughts, and this sort of piggybacks off of just some of the work that the school committee has done in forming their policies, and some of the work that Colleen was doing on the select board. Getting policies and writing and putting them down. Like you were talking about with 1727 Upton Street and learning from that process. I think there are things that we can do as developments come along that are good guidelines for us, from introductory meetings with developers and getting plans and drawings and designs up online, communication with either the planning board or the ZBA and the select board, because everything is so siloed, somewhat intentionally, that it can be, I think, hard to get everybody and keep everybody on the same page. And I see that as one of the functions of this group. We can really be sort of the hub of information for projects that we're involved with, and making sure we're getting information out to these different groups and getting buy-in. So one of the policy ideas that I had was focusing on policies and procedures for project implementation, right? So when a developer comes to us and they have an idea, a policy ought to be, the Affordable Housing Trust representative is to make the select board aware of the meeting, of what's being discussed, and what the project might entail. Because it's always a little bit vague, right? When people come to us with these project ideas, 1727 is obviously going to look very different than it was initially proposed. And, I think when I first met John Grant, it was through Bruce Spinney, and I can't even remember what the board knew and what the board didn't know at the time, and how transparent that process was. I don't think there was information that was intentionally withheld, but certainly I think that the larger people didn't get interested in it until it became real, and so long as we're staying out in front of it and making sure people at least have access to all the information that we have, then that would be helpful.
So my question to that is, when a developer comes, their first stop usually isn't here.
That's true.
So how do we facilitate that to boards and committees that have already met with these people? I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
but I think the problem with 7027 that we had was that we did a grant agreement, and that has never happened before, so that wasn't on anybody's radar to watch out for.
Yep.
So I think a grant agreement policy makes sense. How that happens, if we're entering into a grant agreement, we gotta notify people that that's happening. I don't even know if that, should we even do a public hearing at that point so that people have an opportunity to give input to us?
Yeah.
So we can shape that grant agreement.
Yep.
But I think a grant agreement policy makes sense.
I think that does make a lot of sense. Because certainly, I don't think ZBA is thinking about its interactions with us. I don't think the planning board is thinking about its interactions with us, but certainly as advocates for something that is frequently unpopular, we need to be thinking about, what's our relationship like with ZBA? What's our relationship like with planning board, and what's our relationship like with the select board? And even if those relationships aren't great, we can't really ignore it. So I think you're right. When we get involved with the project and there is a grant, we probably ought to, I don't know, do we request a meeting with ZBA or planning board, or do we just show up to their meetings and, at the public, whatever public comment section that there is, say, hey, just want to make you aware that this is what's going on.
I think we have our public hearing process.
Right.
If they want to attend, and then, follow up by sending them, letters. Additionally, I think even projects we're not involved in, we should be paying attention to and setting letters of support.
Right.
We just did that with 14 Snow Road. I think that's another advocacy thing that we should be doing. So I don't know about relationship in the sense of always showing up to each other's meetings, but communicating through emails and letters of support makes sense.
Right. So we can even just say it's a policy of the Affordable Housing Trust that, when the trust enters into a grant agreement, that the contents or the existence of that grant agreement will be communicated to ZBA, planning board, and select board.
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes total sense.
Yep.
Is there any other stakeholder you can think of that might want to know that? Like, should we also include CPC?
Yeah.
Because a lot of that money is CPA money, so
Yep.
send them a copy. Okay. Those seem like the people that would be the most interested. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, select board, if there's any sort of initial agreement that needs to go through select board, they probably want to be kept in the loop too,
right,
so.
right.
Because usually they have to get a, agreement from select board first, if the community's on board with the project, if it's like 14 Snow, for example.
Did we do that with 1727 when we issued our grant agreement? Did we get select board buy-in?
We, not in the same way that we did, because Snow Road was 40B, so not in the same way, but they're,
Snow Road doesn't have a grant agreement with us.
no, I know, but I was
Oh,
just saying, like, just thinking about like other groups that might want to be kept in the loop if select board, if there's a project that they sign off on at the beginning, keeping them, I mean, this is, sorry, I'm confusing it because the grant agreement is separate, so.
Yeah.
But just kind of in general, I guess, if you're thinking about people who are groups that are involved, just keeping them in the loop.
Or maybe even like proactively let these groups know, like, hey, we can make grant agreements.
Right.
If you see a development that you really like and support, send them to us, and we can try to support them in
So
any
that-
way we can.
And this overlaps a little bit with outreach, but also, let me just back up a second. I think we ought to have a goals meeting at the beginning of every renewed term, right? So July. So I would say it ought to be a policy of the Affordable Housing Trust that it has a goals meeting within 90 days of July 1 of every year, right? And that way, when we come up with goals, if we think there are projects on the horizon or new initiatives that we want to pursue, we can then communicate those to select board, planning board, ZBA, CPC, right? And how we do that, we don't have to decide right this second. But then I wonder if it ought to be a policy that we meet generally after the goals meeting with either the select board or the ZBA or the planning board, just to have a discussion, just to let them know. Because I know that, it's hard for me to say this because, I know what those meetings look like most of the time. And, I know that, that was something that I think Mark Alamo and Craig were asking for relative to 1727. I don't think it was really going to be a really good discussion that was going to help. But I think if you can get it out of the specifics of a project and talk generally about what it is we're doing here and what the goals are, that way at least they know and no one's going to be blindsided.
Can you just repeat that part of the policy again?
Yeah, that this trust meet at least once, I would say at least once a year with the select board.
Okay, so I think that's also a select board goal as well.
Yeah.
They're trying to, but I think also we have a select board rep that
Right.
can be giving updates regularly as well. So I don't know if we necessarily need a policy that says we have to meet with them when we have a member that's always meeting with them.
Yeah.
Right?
I think the goals meeting should be a policy. I agree. I don't know if we need necessarily to write out in a policy
Right.
that we need to meet with the select board. But we could. I'm not sure.
So I think
I think it would help though.
I think there's a difference between policy and like our best practice.
Right.
And I don't think just going through all the policies that we've done, coming up with even 5 policies tonight, it's going to be laborious
Yeah.
to write those policies and then
Yeah.
put them into practice. So I think we should stick to like a grant policy seems like a no-brainer. We have to do that one.
Yeah.
So let's start with that, and we've checked our policy box, and we're going to start after we've completed that policy, tackle the next policy.
Right.
But then make a list of general good practices that we're going to have a goals meeting in the first 90 days. We're going to reach out to our stakeholders when we see something on the horizon that might be of interest to them. That's general guidelines that might not necessarily need a policy.
Sure, that's fair. The next one I thought of, we're already doing this, but we have to have an annual accounting done. It just ought to
Yeah.
be, I think it just ought to be in writing that,
Audit, you mean?
yeah, audit. who knows how long each of us is gonna serve on this, is gonna be, you know, 7 new people, I'm sure, within a few years.
So that's in like either a charter or bylaw. That's already somewhere.
Oh, that's already, is that a bylaw?
That is a bylaw. Like,
Okay.
that's how I dug it up and was like, hey guys,
Okay.
we gotta.
That was in our packet
Okay.
as a requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also in like Grafton charter or bylaw. And that's one thing that I think we need to talk about as like a low hanging fruit, that we might want to revisit that and propose like an alternative wording
Yeah,
at town meeting, because the way it's worded now, it's gonna cost us way more money than it actually needs to do. I've looked into it. It's like 10 or 15 grand, and we don't have 10 or 15 grand worth of stuff to be auditing.
yeah, seriously.
But the way they worded it, and I don't think that was their intention. That's not the spirit. It doesn't feel like. So we need to change the wording on that. So I think we need to.
What are we getting from CPC annually these days? Like 45 grand?
No, I think it's closer to like 75, 80.
75, 80?
Yeah,
It's
so
even
it's not
still,
nothing.
taking 15 off the top is like, you know, it's 20% of your income's gone.
Yeah, I think everyone would support the idea
Yeah.
of. What am I proposing? A amendment to one of them, and I think we should be considering that for the spring.
Okay. And that's all I had for policy suggestions. Anybody have anything else?
I think that's a good start.
All right, well, I did the stupid thing, so now I gotta go write it.
I guess in terms of operational, one thing that's was mentioned in some of the materials in the packet were subcommittees. And
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if policy would be one of those that we would consider as a subcommittee. If there's gonna be enough there, or if we're gonna just trust the sort of writing up from staff and review in the meetings and all that.
I think where we are now, we could probably just trust staff, or even one of us take a stab at it. Like, you know, I wrote the CP. There's one policy for CPC now, and I wrote that, and then we went over it for several months and teased it out, and everybody gave their input, and that's why I think even just doing one policy here and doing it that way makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
And then the general guidelines, I think also maybe staff can take a crack at that, and then we can tease out or add what we want, and
Okay.
that gets us going like right away.
Oh, here's another policy I forgot. So when we do get plans and drawings in, those should be published on our webpage in the town.
Yeah.
Right, okay. That way everybody has, this is what this might look like. And should be surprised. People will still be surprised, but nobody should be surprised,
Right.
because the information's there.
Or even
So I would see that in the project implementation policy.
Okay,
Just sort of, what I'd like to work on fairly short term, is to just bring the 25 Worcester Street project up to sort of planning board standards in terms of the documentation that's up there.
Yep.
Craig, Dauphiné asked about an
Saw that.
update in the, select board meeting, so
Saw
I
that.
would rather just say, go to the website.
Yeah.
Cause then it's just an easier process
sure.
for us. And anybody who might be interested will be able to just go and look at, I don't think we need to go to the level of the documents we were asked about for 1727.
Right.
That got really ridiculous with W-9s, and people obviously had an agenda for that, and that's not what I'm talking about. But I think key decisions, key documents like the RFP itself, the RFP response, any contracts,
that timeline.
yeah, the timeline that we were given, those sorts of things, I think are very, those are easy things that we'll have in hand, and it'll be much easier to just publish those as we go along. But right now, what we need is a catch-up.
Yep.
And then maybe once every 6 months or a year, we can just do an update on here's the latest.
Okay.
Because there's not, from our standpoint, probably not much is gonna change until we get our next update sometime over in the spring or summer.
Okay.
So,
That makes sense. Yeah, and I like that too, because it takes it out of the realm of, you being put in a position on the select board where you're answering for, what is this gonna be?
uh-huh,
And the documents all speak for themselves, so you just go take a look and this is what it is,
absolutely.
Let me just write down a few of these.
So in the area of sort of operational, I do think we should have a subcommittee for communication and outreach.
Okay.
We need some focus on that.
Yep.
And I'm sort of, really just trying to take the lessons from 1727. What can we do better for 25 Worcester so we don't end up on our back foot when it starts to get real? Because
Yep.
we know that's going to happen. So how can we do a better job communicating, publishing information, getting people ready for when that happens?
Public hearings. That's what prompts,
Sure.
people's attention over there. But also I feel like they wait until it's far along in the process where they feel like they can make an impact, not realizing that they can make an impact at any point in the process.
Yep.
So even early on, even if our public hearings are not that well attended, it's still another opportunity for people to show up and maybe even impact it in a way that the later public hearings that ZBA are planning aren't as, intense because they had an opportunity earlier to relieve
Yeah.
that pressure.
So this is an excellent segue into the other poster board.
Can we ask
Outreach.
Sarah, do you have any input for operational?
No, I just, from my perspective and just giving my personal background, communication, I definitely think is important also, but I say that without having the full context of the 1727 Upton Street, because joining in July, but kind of seeing it unfold in the kind of thick of it, there clearly was an opportunity to have some more awareness around that. So I'm definitely on board with the idea to be more focused on communication.
Yeah. So with that in mind, I was telling Colleen earlier that the Massachusetts Housing Partnership had a online forum about affordable housing trust goals, and they got a guy from Amherst and another guy from the South Shore. Now I'm blanking on which town. I think it was Marshfield. And both of those communities, they're very different. Of course, Amherst has a lot of students, so there are unique issues to that sort of thing. And then Marshfield was a little bit more like Grafton, where there was just a lot of ignorance and resistance to affordable housing. People didn't really understand what it was, and so each of the communities had challenges. But what each of them did as one of their policies and goals was they committed to at least 2 or 3 community outreach meetings per year. Just to get people informed about what the issues were surrounding affordable housing, what affordable housing is and what it is not, as well as what the specific needs of the community are. So I think that's a good idea. And, I think that in the coming couple of years, we're certainly going to be talking about outreach regarding 25 Worcester Street, which I think is going to be harder than 27 Upton.
I do too.
Yeah, because there's a neighborhood, right? I mean,
Yep.
Upton Street had people were generally concerned about the location near the common, but people are going to be specifically concerned about what that project is going to look like, especially, and you already heard it the other night from Craig. He's already on it.
I get it.
Yeah.
And the difficulty with that project in particular is that it's a nonprofit.
Right.
So they don't have a lot of leeway in terms of, well, we'll just swap this material out. We'll add more brick there. And
Right.
they're not in that mode. They're in, we need to build a single structure, one elevator. It's economy
Right.
for them because it's all on grant money.
That's right.
So it's going to be a challenge.
There will
for
be.
sure. But I think we have to start now. We have to prepare people for, what the intention is. Because we saw it when we first came out with the conceptual drawings.
Right.
Just those weren't even anything that was proposed, and we had people in here. Well, why aren't you guys using the, Habitat for Humanity, and we
Right.
want duplexes, and
Yep.
Fine, get it, but so we actually have an RFP response that we've awarded now. So it's an actual thing now,
Right.
and we need to communicate that and then give updates along the way. So super important. I don't think we can start soon enough with that.
Yeah.
Because I do think that's going to go through ZBA, and it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a real interesting prospect.
And that is one of the things that, having watched several ZBA meetings now, they do get concerned with, the aesthetics and what it does look like. As an advocate for housing, speaking for myself, frequently undervalue that. I really don't particularly care what a lot of them look like, but you know, a lot of people do care a lot, and that's obviously going to be a conversation that they're going to have. So, when do we see these outreach meetings happening? I would probably want to do them at least one each side of the year, sometime around a town meeting, so that people are if there's a proposal that we have either for transfer of town-owned land to us or funding to us for a particular project above the typical 10-15% from CPC. That way, there at least some people at the town meeting are going to have it on their minds about, okay, this is what the housing trust does, this is why it does it, and this is what the needs are in the community. So that so that we're not educating for a proposal at the very least on town meeting floor more than we need to. You know.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The recent zoning proposal
Right.
At the fall town meeting was a good example of, would have been great.
Right.
That was
To
such
have-
a sleeper. I did not see that coming.
So we don't see that coming. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But we have to have, and it goes back to the relationships. We've got to have a better relationship with the planning board where they think, oh, we can plug into the Affordable Housing Trust to advocate, to educate, all that kind of stuff, and maybe the Housing Trust can get people out to vote for it.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, that surprised the heck out of me.
So
In retrospect, though, had the, I think if the planning board had come to us, it would have been on our radar a little bit more, and I think we would have been prepared a little bit more at town meeting to address some of the concerns, and they may have come up in our discussion.
Yeah.
It's difficult to say. Obviously, the development in Grafton has become a real hot button topic, even more so than it has in the past. It feels to me like the level of concern with any development going on in Grafton in any version, it's really up there now.
yeah,
And it's not like the development's going to stop.
it's not.
And the state is requiring towns to do density. So the type of development that people are most concerned about is going to continue to happen. And things like 25 Worcester are going to get caught up in the fervor to stop it all, period.
Right.
Because that's the intention. We don't want to see density anywhere in Grafton.
Right.
Except maybe up by the train station or, out on 140 or,
Right.
Somewhere that's whatever.
Not
But
going to bother my eyes.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So you want to commit to 2 of these per year?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we should. I think we should at least target, have that be our goal.
Yeah.
Is to do one per town meeting.
Right.
So when it comes to outreach, I was also thinking community meetings, but with a different premise, which is getting stakeholders in the same room. When we were doing meetings for the master plan, we had a meeting in the Commons where there was a bunch of different tables and a bunch of different activities, and I'd love to see the Affordable Housing Trust host such like a mixer like the EDC does with local businesses. We have local housing programs available, like representatives from those programs, so that people looking for affordable housing just have to come in and they meet with multiple people right there. Like create an easy access opportunity, what might seem difficult for somebody looking for affordable housing.
Right.
I don't know how to do that, but I think I'd like to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an affordable housing forum, right?
Right.
But like resources, like, oh, are you
So
on
you're
this list? Or
thinking-
you so get a couple resources in a room.
Yeah.
So that we're like, just go to that table or go to that or go to all the tables and have a slice of pizza while you're here. You know what I mean? And then have a project page or a table from us to be like, oh, and by the way, this is what we're working on too, for people who might just want to come in for that part, but also we're offering, a resource for people actively looking for affordable housing.
Okay. Yeah. Good idea.
My only question for that is how do we drive attendance? Because I would love to get in CHAPA,
Yeah.
MHP, HLC. If we're gonna get groups like that in, we gotta have some attendance.
I imagine they could also help promote the fact that they will be these places, and they might have a net that they can be casting. And while it's obviously we want to promote this for Grafton residents more than Grafton residents might be showing up.
Right.
So that was where I was sort of headed with it.
Right.
Seems like it, we can sponsor it, but it's, ideally it would be advertised, to towns around us as well.
Right.
I think.
And I think there's no way to prevent that.
CMRPC can get looped in and
Yeah.
help advertise, kind of like the workshop, and
Yep.
they have a lot of they interact regularly with the state and know people at MHP and UHLC who can do that thing, so
Yeah.
could get the right people in the room relatively easily.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah, as I was sort of thinking the same thing. I was wondering, in addition to those types of groups, if we could identify other local affordable housing trusts or similar entities, and talk to them, because it really is, housing is a regional thing. What happens in Shrewsbury, Worcester, Upton, it impacts us too, Westboro. So that would be interesting to see if maybe we, I don't know, do you reach out to MHP, say, look, this is what we're thinking. What do you have contacts for?
So, the idea of regionalizing, I love that idea.
Yeah.
Because I know that there's communities that are sitting on buckets of money that they're not going to do anything with.
Right.
And if there was a way to like sponsor communities that are actively using it and move that money over, it's still being used for the same purpose, but it's in a different community, which I'm pretty sure is illegal. But
Yes.
but if we could make that legal, that would be great.
Well, I mean, at the very least, information sharing, I think is fantastic. And, strategies, when you're looking for a house, at least this was my experience, we were looking regionally. We weren't necessarily tied to looking at Grafton. We were looking at Shrewsbury, we were looking Westboro, we were looking Grafton, and, we ended up here. But that's what, people who are fleeing higher cost markets and trying to come here, this is also a high cost market, but not as high as Eastern Massachusetts. That's what they do, So yeah. What else on outreach? Oh,
Maybe it'd be worthwhile to, and this kind of falls under both the outreach as well as the kind of what was it that you said, kind of the onboarding of kind of like new members, of kind of like a helpful document. Like I really like that idea, Colleen, of thinking about who are the people directly impacted by this work. And so I think of these kind of circles, almost like a Venn diagram, that we need to have outlined to kind of who are these groups that we need to support and liaise with. So, we talked about the other ZBA, planning board, CPC, and then there's also the general community, then the people who are going to be seeking this housing, and then kind of our fellow peers in other communities doing affordable housing and kind of sharing. So there's some crossover.
Yeah.
But I almost wonder if it's worthwhile to have like this isn't a policy or like a specific goal, but just having like a living document that can be referenced with all of this. And then from that, I almost see that helping drive individual roles. So maybe then someone's kind of like, okay, I'm on the like end user community outreach projects,
Yes.
the people that are going to be directly versus kind of general community awareness and supporting those 1 or 2 meetings that we have a year type thing.
Believe it or not, there used to be such a thing as the Grafton Affordable Housing Trust Handbook. I don't know where it is. I think it's gone with Ann Morgan. I think it disappeared. I might have a copy of it somewhere in an old dusty file cabinet in my basement. But I would love to create something like that where the policies are all there, the definition of affordable housing is all there, a description of what we do is all there, and of course reference to the housing production plan is all in one place, so that not only can new members see that, but also the general public. Because that could be like a one-stop shopping for the information that you need, so that when we're out and we're doing community outreach meetings, or when Matt is at the select board meetings and people have questions, also boom, there it is. We're referencing the document that's posted on our webpage, and so everybody can have that information. Let me put that up on the thing. writing Roman numerals.
So MHP has one,
Yes, they've got a good one.
and then, you know, Cohasset even references that MHP one as theirs. And if you're talking about one that's so outdated,
Yeah.
is it worth finding it?
Like the
or-
definitions are still the same, you know, what
Right.
the mission of the trust is still the same. At least that, you know, it's as a lawyer, 90% of my job writing is like cribbing stuff off of old stuff that was already written. So that's what I'm used to doing. I've lost my creative capacity a long time ago.
Oh, it's different ones.
So one of the suggestions from Amherst was, I mean, these are all similar to what we've been talking about, but they actually also said identify already pre-existing meetings and events that we can attend. So, for instance, like EDC is a good one because whether the people on the current membership of EDC knows it or not, one of their goals 10 years ago was to also assist in the development of housing, workforce housing in Grafton. Because one of the challenges that employers have, even going back to 2014, was that they're having a hard time paying people because, of course, the housing costs are skyrocketing. And so your employees are living further and further from work, which has all sorts of like implications for job performance and just in retaining employees. So, you know, to the extent that they have events that we, you know, might be interested in, to the extent certainly that CPC has events that we might be interested in, even like senior center events that we can go to and form relationships with them because, again, those are going to be the people that are going to be impacted the most by 25 Worcester Street. You know, and that's like a natural advocacy group
Yeah.
for us, or at least they ought to be, you know.
Absolutely.
So what do you envision, like, so the only event EDC really throws is their like kind of wine and cheese mixer with local businesses.
Yeah.
So would you picture us like having a table there to just answer questions about upcoming projects?
I mean, if
or-
they I don't want to crash their event and say, "Hey, we're setting up a table at your event," but at least go to it and, you know, begin to form that relationship so that in the future maybe they do say, "Hey, you know what would be a good idea is if you guys did have a table at this thing, you know, or we could propose it to them." But yeah, something like that.
So crash their event without a table to talk about putting a table up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe you attend their meeting then.
Yeah, maybe just go to their meeting.
Maybe
I
you
don't
go to
know.
a meeting. Okay.
Maybe I don't need to be that secretive or
Alright.
sneaky about it.
But the workforce housing idea is a good one. I
Yeah.
think that's something that certainly somebody could attend their meeting and bring them some information about the importance of workforce housing
Yep.
in terms of business, development and support for sure.
All we need to do is print up that Dukakis Center report
There you
that
go.
nobody read.
So, speaking of their upcoming event, talking about that zoning change would be really helpful.
Right.
To let the local businesses know why this was positive for them and which local businesses specifically would have been impacted and created opportunities for. Is that something you think will be on the radar for that?
I think it could be more on the radar, so I can definitely work on that. And the tough thing, they meet on Mondays, the same day as planning board, but I do have a assistant planner that I can delegate that to. So
Yeah.
Are you guys contemplating bringing that zoning change back at some point?
I believe we can't for 2 years,
Okay.
but with the the housing bond bill, I think we'll be able to move in a positive direction. But yeah, we probably would like to bring that back.
Okay.
Because it was I believe in fall 2022, it was originally proposed and it was defeated, and then I tried again and it was defeated again. But I think we revise our informational materials, we do more outreach as we're discussing now,
Yep.
and address it in a better way, in a more open way, so people understand, maybe more diagrams and what
Like
have
a
you. So,
presentation,
yeah, a full, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I don't know how to say this as a goal, but because it takes two. But I really, in retrospect, really do wish we'd had a conversation with the planning board about that proposal.
Yeah.
Because we could have been advocates for that, But I didn't. I mean, first I got to that meeting late, but I also didn't feel like I was in any position to say anything about it because, I mean, I knew what I'd read, but I, hadn't had a conversation with like Dave Robbins or anything about it.
Right.
You know.
Same.
So that was sort of a missed opportunity, but, I guess, informally, we can, all, I think, agree that when we become aware that there are those sorts of changes, that the planning board is proposing, that maybe we meet with them, maybe we talk to them, ask, like, how can we be helpful to you
Yeah.
at a meeting, So, also, question about outreach. As a concrete interim goal, do we want to do a specific outreach meeting in 2025 about 25 Worcester Street? Or are we going to fold that into our first, like, biannual outreach meeting?
I don't see why we can't do both,
True.
because that's like the next big one.
Right,
And I think the more we're just obvious with it,
right.
there's still going to be people that show up and say they had no idea what's going on, and that's fine. But
Yep.
like, the more we do this, and just practice doing it, really.
Yeah, I was thinking,
I think we should put it in.
okay,
I think we should just incorporate it into the existing meeting.
Oh, you don't
Yeah.
think you have a separate one?
I wouldn't have a separate one.
Okay.
That's just me, but there's a lot of organization, there's a lot of staff time that's involved in all this, and I
That's true.
just want to sort of think about.
I have an idea.
which idea?
Film something at GCTV, so people can watch it whenever they want.
Good idea.
Sure.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah.
Fiona saw the light bulb go on my face.
I did.
She's
I
like,
did.
something's happening.
It was a great thing to see. You were like, wait.
So, not that we have to get too much into the meeting details, but I was thinking that if we're going to talk about 25 Worcester Street, it would be a good idea to have that first meeting as close to 25 Worcester Street as possible.
Yeah.
So maybe do it at the library.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we can look into reserving space there for, just a conversation.
Yep.
And then you sort of, we'll market it as, 25 Worcester Community Outreach Affordable Housing Trust meeting. See if we can get the developer to come.
Yeah.
And
Great idea.
answer questions. Yeah, because that way it's within walking distance for the people that are in that neighborhood.
Wait, so now we are doing a separate 25?
No, we're going to do the first pre-May town meeting, but brand it as a 25 Worcester Street outreach.
Okay.
And that'll encompass one of our two
And then
annual
you're
meetings.
suggesting we do a separate GCTV thing just on 25 Worcester.
Yeah, and I think that's something we can just keep doing going forward, and
Yeah.
then people can watch it. And
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Good idea.
All right. Anything else for outreach? Anything, Sarah?
Did we touch base with that guy? I know he came in a few months ago, and the one who is from the nonprofit who spoke to us over Zoom before kind of scheduling anything. I think it would make sense to invite him back to one of our upcoming meetings and
Yeah,
touch base.
it does. We are, we talk about this like it's way off in the future, but we only have February, March, April, and then one trust meeting in May before town meeting. So it's 4 meetings from now. Maybe we should have him in at the March meeting and say, listen, this is what we're planning for May. Please come.
well, let's touch base with the library too and see what dates are available, because I know
Yeah.
they always have something going on, so that we can offer them like, hey, of
Yep.
these 3 days, what works best for you, and then block in that date.
Just gonna write this down before I forget to do it. Reach out to library. Reach out to developer. Okay, I think that sounds good.
If the library doesn't work, Apple Tree Arts is also another.
Oh yeah, that's
Good
right. That's a
spot.
good one. Yep. Oh yeah, perfect. I forgot all about that space. Okay. Anything else on outreach? All right. Let's.
Dan is here.
Hey Dan.
Yeah, you got here maybe like 15 minutes ago. Dan, do you have any goals?
Oh boy.
Housing goals, not life goals.
Lose weight. No. I sorry, I'm late. I had a sick kid issue going on. So I'm not sure what's been covered so far, but yeah, for goals, I outreach I feel like is one of the big ones that I would have brought up. So I'm glad that that's getting a lot of attention. Um, I I keep thinking about that meeting we had right before I forget what year it was, the town meeting where we were thinking about going back to town meeting to get the age restriction removed for 25 Worcester Street. And we had like 30 people, 30 angry people in the room, and one non-angry person. And uh, I just feel like the not giving people more opportunities just lets them kind of uh, build up their anger, and then it all just comes out. So
Yeah.
I feel like we need to do more outreach, and there really are a lot more affordable housing advocates in town than it feels like, and um, doing outreach to them too is important.
That's a good point.
Yep.
Yep. I was thinking about that, Dan. Like, I don't know. Does Rise like meet as a group, or is that just a Facebook sort of online thing?
Grafton Rise is kind of slowed down a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, uh, there's kind of like maybe 10-ish people who are really interested in doing things. So
But to that point, a lot of them showed up for 1727 during the planning board process. And they even went as far as to say wear the certain color, and that color will indicate your support. So even if you don't get up and say anything, it will kind of indicate that we're in support of this project, whether
Yeah.
you knew that or not. But I do think they're a good resource to try to tap into to just invite, obviously.
And I think the is it the Unitarian Church up on the Common does a lot of sort of charitable, progressive-minded speaking and that sort of thing. So maybe reaching out to them as well to say, listen, this is who we are, this is what we do. Maybe there's an opportunity to make a connection with that audience as well. That's a good idea.
And if we're reaching out to one church, reach out to all the churches.
Yeah.
I mean, any parish that probably anybody could need affordable housing. You just don't know. You can't just look at a person and say that person. You know what I mean? Like, just, I don't know.
I mean, I was in church on Christmas Eve and I heard this story about this recently homeless couple who wandered around the streets expecting a child, looking for shelter. I was like, whoa, this is an affordable housing story. But that's just how my mind works.
That's pretty great.
Yeah. So, okay. Anything else on outreach? All right, let's go. So, Dan, we did, so far we've done operational goals. We're promulgating some policies. We're going to put those into writing. We're going to try to work on a handbook for new members. And then we did outreach. We've committed to 2 community meetings around the town meeting calendar, right before town meeting. Attending other groups' events, working with other groups, forming relationships with them, and then Colleen suggested we do, for our housing proposal, our one current housing proposal that hasn't started yet is 25 Worcester doing a Grafton GCTV, what am I missing? Presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be that long.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And even if the developer just 2 birds, 1 stone. Hey, come in, film this with us. Talk
Yeah.
about your project real quick, and then we have lovely editing that can
Yeah.
be all put together. And
It's good for them. I mean, it's free marketing and advertising, right? And they can put that on their website and say, this is what we're doing.
I think the shorter the better.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Let's make sure we have visuals so people can actually sort of grasp in their head what it is, proposed to look like and all of that.
But do we have visuals yet? That's the thing. It's still early on.
Yeah.
We do have some diagrams, but yeah, so that would be
That's a double-edged sword, though, because now people are going to fall in love with that image that could change.
Well, I mean, if I think we make that clear.
as
There's
long
no
as it's
getting around
changed,
that.
as long as we're advertising those changes along the way. It's
Okay.
sort of the trap we ran into with
Right.
27.
Right.
As these things happen, we have to be updating information on the website. Maybe do a yearly one on 25 Worcester, whatever. as long as we're totally transparent, yeah, things are gonna change in developments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if what we can't do, I think we all know, is just wait until people start showing up to ZBA meetings
Yeah.
with complaints.
Yeah, we definitely figured out what not to do.
Right.
Right.
Anything
yeah.
else is probably gonna be great.
Yeah. All right. So the next set of categories that we want to talk about is development on the one hand, and then funding on the other hand. So we can put development over here.
What do you mean by development?
Yeah. What are our goals for the development of actual buildings and structures over the course of, I would say, the next 5 years?
So things like zoning.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. You know, identifying town-owned land to build on. You know, some affordable housing trusts have it as a, oh, there's a sticky on the back of it. That's amazing.
They think about it.
So in love with this. So some affordable housing trusts have it as a goal. We're going to create, our goal is to create 20 owned homes within the next 5 years. Or our goal is to create 200 rental units within the next 10 years or something like that.
Create one more grant agreement.
Yeah.
So Fiona, one thing that I was contemplating is often when things go before planning, there are
Oh, just kidding.
no, it's all good. There are waivers that are requested,
Yeah.
right? And so typically there's a little bit of horse trading that goes on, right?
Yes.
So any waivers that are granted, depending on what they are, typically there's some conversation about, so, okay, Grafton might be willing to do that.
Sure.
What are you, developer, gonna bring to the table,
Yeah.
right? I feel like now that we've done this grant agreement with 1727, we have a little bit of experience now with if sort of buying units or subsidizing, that sort of thing. I'm wondering, particularly for larger developments with more units, if there is the potential for that being part of the conversation. Like, developer, you could go talk to the Affordable Housing Trust and as a part of this, you know, site plan or development or whatever, going above and beyond the 10%,
Yep.
with a conversation about some reimbursement or grant, you know, whatever. Obviously, we don't have unlimited funds, but
Right. But they get some, are you thinking some additional considerations
Yeah.
or relief because they're providing a community benefit? Like
with
such as
affordable
that,
housing that
with
goes
affordable
above and
housing.
beyond the 10% if it's
Yeah.
a sort of owned unit or, you know, 25% or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Just to sort of, and I'm not sure exactly how that would work sort of
Yeah.
in
Same.
practice, but it just seems like I think the trust has a potential for taking smaller bites at the apple.
Yeah.
So instead, you know, 1727 was a big undertaking and will continue to be a big undertaking. 25 Worcester is as well. I was trying to think about, are there smaller initiatives that we could take on in the interim period, like working on buying a deed restriction for one duplex, for example, in a bigger development, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we'd still be getting reasonable bang for the buck. The developer would get a little bit more consideration potentially at planning.
Yeah.
I don't want to be stepping on their toes, so this is just,
Yeah, we're just.
I'm just spitballing an idea here. And you know, another thing that's mentioned in there are these undersized lots. So could we talk to developers during the process for, you know, could there be some coordination with the Affordable Housing Trust and planning to work with an undersized lot
Yeah.
idea
Yes.
to bring affordable housing, you know, into that one lot? again, I don't know what's possible, but, you know, more modest initiatives, I think, would be, potentially easier to move through the processes, less expensive, because we're not going to have $2 million to
Yeah.
throw at projects regularly. So what do we do with the 70 grand a year we get? I don't know, every 2 or 3 years, if we could, you know, sponsor a triplex or duplex or something like, I don't know, just,
Yeah.
you know,
I think the short answer is yes. It depends on, you know, obviously every development is different and what have you. But yeah, I think that more modest ways to support through planning is definitely a viable option. And I was just saying the first thing that came to my head is, you know, density bonuses, but that we don't have a provision for really for multifamily. It's more like subdivision style development where you can get that density
Yep.
bonus, but it's not so much like a height density bonus. But I'm that's just me thinking out loud as one example. There's options, and I think I can definitely figure that out and talk to the planning board about it even on Monday and say, you know, this I've had this conversation with the Affordable Housing Trust. You know, some of this might be something to consider to change at town meeting so we can allow for more. Because the bylaw, I think the bylaw could be bolstered in that regard as well. But
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
yeah, so I'll have that conversation with them. Say, you know, where this is the trust is looking to do this. Let's talk about options and how we can create more options going forward as well. I think that's
Yeah. Even with the town-owned land, you know, I know that the trust looked a number of years ago at Hudson Ave. You know, it was looking at the whole chunk.
Right,
What if we asked for 3 acres?
right.
You know, again, you know, we don't need the whole ball of wax. Can we do something more modest?
Yeah.
Still allowing for, you know, future cemetery needs, but also adding some affordable housing? Or could we take that on and say we're going to develop 3 acres and conserve the rest in perpetuity with a conservation restriction
Right.
to sort of balance housing and open
Yeah.
space needs? I don't know, but I was, you know, just thinking as we were thinking about goals with regards to development, what can we do that's a little bit more modest that the trust could actually focus on in between some of these larger projects?
yes.
What about closing costs on affordable units? Now, if a person's buying an affordable unit, they've been vetted 6 ways to Sunday by other people. So if
Right.
they need help with the closing costs, they can apply for grants through us, and we can help them with their closing costs.
Yeah, we can do that.
Sure. Yeah, there's all sorts of programs like that, like property improvements for elders and other things that I think are sort of kind of listed in the housing production plan as potentials. I think those are all
Yeah, why don't
good
we,
things to think about.
we can sort of just describe those as soft costs, programs that we can implement to help people do stuff like that. But, you know, as far as the production of actual buildings goes, one of the things that led us to 1727 Upton and then 25 Worcester Street as larger, more denser developments is we had the money.
Yep.
You know, and the question became, since 2014, what was the best bang for the buck for the money that we had? Now, again, I've said it before, but it's worth repeating. $800,000 from Pulte seems like a lot of money until you realize that basically buys you one house around here. You know, so we didn't want to do that. But now that we're looking at, you know, getting 70 grand a year from CPC and that really being the bulk of our funds, then sure, you know, doing something like 17 townhomes makes a ton of sense, you know, instead of like 40, you know, denser units. So, you know, the housing production plan says that our goal is to foster development of town-owned property, number of units 81. I don't know where they got 81 units. But, you know, if we would have to fight tooth and nail to get 60 units onto 25 Worcester Street, and I doubt that's going to happen. You know, so you probably end up with somewhere south of that. Is it a goal that we have to identify additional town-owned land like Hudson and put additional units there? One of the strategies that I think Amesbury or Marshfield used was identify town-owned lots that are non-conforming, right? That nobody can really do anything else with, that we could potentially do a friendly 40B on and do like a duplex or a triplex or something like that on that particular lot of land. So, I mean, let me ask this question. We already have it in the housing production plan, such as it is, about the number of units that we want to build. Is there an appetite on the trust to identify a specific number of units that we want to pursue over the course of the next 5 or 10 years? Other than what's in the housing production plan?
I feel like that's so hard because there's so many variables.
Right.
Like we can say a goal, but there's so many variables that
Right.
I don't know.
I think that's
Yeah.
unrealistic.
Okay.
Just based on our previous experience,
Right.
how long it takes, all of the regulatory and funding hurdles and political hurdles that we have.
Right.
I don't know. I don't even know that I could come up with a number.
Okay. I would say
Yeah,
that,
because I feel like we need like a tracker. Because I look at these numbers and I agree, I'm kind of like, I don't know how much of a dent is that going to have. So, how many units do we already have? What is the projection over time? So, yeah, I almost think we don't, maybe it's just tracking that data over time
So
of,
that's an interesting one. Do we know how many deed restricted,
we had 741.
Yeah.
actually deed restricted ones,
Actually
or
deed
just
restricted.
SHI?
Well, so in order to get into SHI, they do need to be deed restricted. Oh, no, that's not true. No, because they count towards, that's right, because the apartments count toward.
Yeah, I'm talking actual deed restriction.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure if we know that.
And another thing that came up for me as I was reading through these was I wasn't aware that we had deed restrictions that were time limited.
Yeah.
Do we know?
Yeah, some.
Do we know how many of those there are? Because that, I don't know if it makes sense, but it might make sense to look at trying to buy permanent deed restrictions to those
I love that idea.
before it expires.
Yeah.
Or at least have some kind of plan.
Yeah.
Because when I think about, the way CPC handles land acquisition, they have this pipeline that it's probably just in Ken Holberger's head, but they know sort of what the next property is that they're very likely to be acquiring through the first
The land
first
trust
refusal.
too is a big supporter
Yep.
of all that information, I imagine. So,
And what they've done is they have like this. I don't think it's like on a spreadsheet anywhere. Maybe it is, but they've got an idea of okay. So like the policy says that they want to keep to 50% of their sort of expenditures would be bonds for properties. So that they know that they're kind of capped at that, at least informally. And so they have this idea of when things roll off, when other things can roll on, and this sort of pipeline of properties that they want to acquire in discussions with various landowners. And they seem to have set aside some funding for that. I'm speculating on some of this, but I don't hate the approach of if we knew properties that had deeds restrictions that were expiring, if we had some kind of schedule, are there ones that we would deem important for us to try to buy up in advance? And I don't think it has to be 70 grand a year. We can request more money if we
Oh, yeah.
if we need it,
if we identify
and they've been
something,
very forthright in saying, we've never said no.
that's right.
Part of me says I'd like to put them in a position where they've got to make some difficult decisions about, either saying yes to something that we want and not being able to fulfill one of their pipeline projects, or
Or go out to bond for one of our projects.
right, either or.
So the committee has talked about creating a second policy just to that, about how we're gonna handle bonding things and putting it in writing. It doesn't exist now. There is no hard and fast way how they're
Yep.
choosing to do it. There's some guidelines that they try to stay within, but it's not written down anywhere.
Right. And they're evolving in the same way that we are.
100%.
But yeah, I definitely, I would be interested in pursuing anything that might be expiring to see if, I don't know what the process is to sort of lock that in, but
Sure. I don't know the process to lock it in either, but I on the SHI, it shows you when the affordability expires, and it looks like Green Acres Estates. I think that's a housing authority property.
okay.
Yeah, it is. 2041 is when those 48 units expire. It looks like everything else is in perpetuity or not applicable.
So a housing authority though is so.
So I
Do you
wonder
think
if
they just re-up it in 2041?
yeah, I'm sure that they have some sort of they would have a contingency plan. I can confirm, but
That would be great.
yeah, but I think that the point is that to Matt's point, like staying on top of these things and making sure also like incoming units are restricted in perpetuity instead of having to have to go back and revisit and check.
Right.
Advocating for that and monitoring it and making sure and tracking all deed restricted properties, and I'll get the number of actual deed restricted from the SHI, which shouldn't be too hard to do.
Okay.
So-
When properties get sold, that deed restriction stays with them. Is there ever a time where that accidentally falls off? Is that something we should be monitoring too, just to make sure that they?
So the reason why, my recollection is the reason why this all changed was about 12 years ago. That was happening.
They were falling off.
Yes. And people were not keeping track of it. And so the state changed the law. But every now and again, you do see it come up that, okay, this deed restriction is falling out. And,
Dan is.
oh, hey, Dan.
How would we know?
So I just want to mention the Green Acres Estates is owned by the Grafton Housing Associates, not the Housing Authority. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. I don't know a lot about them. I just one time I was curious and I started Googling them. So
You know more than us.
Yeah.
That was good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good to know.
So actually, that's why these two things are actually good to talk about at the same time. So we were just talking about funding. How much was it? 10% we get from
10%.
CPC.
Yeah.
Do we want to start upping that number? That was one of the strategies that I think Marshfield used. Was they started requesting 15%.
I don't have a problem with it. I just think you're going to get opposition unless we have other things in place to justify that additional funding. To say, hey, we see this property that's going to be available in 3 years, and we'd like to help save up for that. But yeah, I think we would have to justify that beyond. We like affordable housing, and we think you should give us more money, right?
Yeah.
So it should be a sort of a project specific as things come up, and we're looking for a little bit more. If we have an idea
that's
or a
all
proposal.
they're really doing too. They only
Yeah.
put 10% aside for land and recreation because that's all it's required, and then the rest goes into unrestricted.
Right.
So, which is how you want it, right? You want a lot of unrestricted money to go to any of them.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Okay.
That's true. Could we maybe ask them to, in the same way where they would be setting aside a certain amount for bond capacity, could we ask them to do something similar for affordable housing projects?
Yeah, I think you can ask.
Where it would be in the unrestricted area, but sort of, I don't know, earmarked, if you will.
I don't think they would do that because it's unrestricted, right? So if something like a playground comes up and they want to fund it, having part of it earmarked would be not advantageous. They would want to be able to use it for whatever they want to use it for. Because it's all dependent on what comes before CPC. It's who asks for the money.
Sure.
So we just need to come up with asks. That's what it's incumbent on us to find the asks.
I'm just thinking about a couple of conversations that I've had that are of the nature where they have an understanding of, like, the Robinson properties and whatnot, and it's not a formal thing, but they're holding a certain capacity so that they can make sure that they can afford properties like that, so that the town doesn't have to use general funds for those acquisitions.
So I've
again,
not been privy to that. If that's the case, in my time on the committee, I haven't experienced that. I feel like those Robinson properties were identified in the watershed, like those were must-haves, must-gets. And even if CPC didn't fund it, it was gonna be funded one way or another, and CPC just happened to have the money. You know, in 2019, I remember there was a conversation around why don't they just sell all of the property, right? It was up to Lee to decide when he wanted to sell it, and you know, if there were private conversations happening, like, hey, wait until we have this built up again and then sell it, maybe, but that certainly wasn't at the committee level.
Okay.
All right. The only other idea or thought that I had about funding was fundraiser, but I don't know anything about fundraisers. If we ever want to try something like that.
I'll make a pie. That's all I can offer you.
Yeah, maybe I'll save that one for another year. The thought of putting together a fundraiser just
Sure.
no. I like the
Then-
pictures at
Well,
Apple Tree.
part
House
of the
fundraiser,
reason that
'cause
I
it's a
was
lot of work.
interested in pursuing smaller, more modest opportunities, but more regular,
Yeah,
was the idea that if we could get some kind of, regular, at least discussion with developers that are coming in with subdivisions or
Yeah.
whatever, and we could start in on a pipeline of, or some regular spending, then we would have good grounds to say we want more than the 10%. Because I think we would get pushback, and if I was CPC, I would push back. You know, because we're just now really spending money,
Right.
and
And fast. We're
and-
good at it.
and fast.
So good
Yep.
at it.
it's nothing like building property. They'll take your money from you.
Right.
But back to your fundraising idea, sorry
No, go
to
ahead.
say, I'm thinking about the library capital campaign and what it was intended for and what it's kind of like turned into. Could we just create another opportunity for people if they just want to donate? Like, donate. Go for it. If you like Affordable Housing Trust and you got some spare coins and you want to give it to us, fantastic. We're going to be using it for this. In addition to that, like when I think about land, sometimes people pass away and they just gift the land.
Sure.
You know, do you want to gift us your house? We
Right.
would definitely take it.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
I just want to say the library capital campaign is it's a 501c3 nonprofit, and so they can just fundraise as much as they want. As a municipal entity, we have to follow I think it's the conflict of interest law that has some pretty big restrictions on how we could. Basically, we can't fundraise. We can accept donations, but we can't ask for donations. I think is the gist of it. There's definitely more details than that.
Can we notify people that we accept donations?
I think so. I would want to double check the like the examples they give in the training to make sure we're following it. Like if you were to like make a Facebook post that says if you're interested in donating, that type of thing. I think I would want to double check, but yeah.
So I guess the end around for that would be to have an interested citizen form a 501c3 Yimby Grafton who accepts donations, and then all of a sudden that 501c3 is gifting us without us having to ask.
That's basically what happened with the capital campaign. I mean, there's the Friends of Grafton Elders.
Right.
That's the same kind of thing for the senior center, and there's actually two of them for the library. There's also the Friends of the Library.
Right. Yeah, maybe we think.
So
about
yeah,
that.
that's a pretty common model.
Good idea.
Oops.
Are there grants that we could be going after?
Always. Definitely.
Who should we be looking for them then? Like your plate's full. So how do we do that?
Well, I have a little bit more openness now because we've hired somebody. I do a lot of grants for a lot of folks, so it's kind of something that I do anyway, and I like doing it, so I'm happy to. If you find something in particular that is worth pursuing, and maybe we can have a conversation about, because a lot of these grants you have to have specific things in place in order to even be able to apply, meet some certain eligibility criteria. So I think that could be of assistance, somebody running some interference there, and then once we know, I can apply, or I can have my assistant planner apply.
Can we identify some basic things to have in place just to make sure we have them in place? Like what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can get like a list of, there's certain like designations of communities, like we're a housing choice community. So that's huge. A lot of grants are, especially if they're housing related, like don't even think about it unless you're a housing choice community.
Right.
That's just one example. So yeah, we can get like a list, of criteria, but yeah, there's grants available. I mean, federal and state, there's the community, compact stuff. There's home, which is federal. It's a little bit more complicated, but yeah, there's plenty of things out there. So, and I can get I'll do a list of kind of baseline criteria and a list of grant opportunities too.
Awesome. Thank you.
So specific again to development, we were talking, or I alluded to earlier, the High Point, lots on High Point, 74, 52, and 48. What do we want to see happen there, and what do we want to see the timeline be for development of those lots?
I want to see houses there.
Yeah, I mean, single family houses, duplexes, are we limited in that already because there's a pre-existing?
So I think we should identify which lots are restricted, and if we want to swap those around, and I think we have to go to ZBA for that. And while we're there, we can ask them that question.
Okay.
Are we restricted in any way, or could we do a duplex that matches the character, but now we have two families instead of one? I wouldn't want to do. I don't know. I just think that would fit that neighborhood.
Yeah. I don't think we want to go out of our way to piss anybody off. And,
No. But I also think we should consider the $100,000 that's coming with it, matching that, and putting that out to RFP, saying, "Hey, we have these 3 lots. We have $200,000. What can you build us?" And see if anybody bites at that. Should we do an RFI first, just to see if there's even interest in that, and then go out to RFP based off that?
What do you need the RFI for?
Just to shape the RFP.
Sure.
Does that make sense? Because we've never really done this.
Sure. I'm just thinking about the 25 Worcester process that we went through.
Just one point, not to cut you off, Matt. So the settlement was worded that it was basically specifics on how to proceed with 48 and 74, and it stated that they needed to remain affordable. And I interpreted that as 52 being you could pursue market rate. It didn't explicitly say that in the settlement, but because it specified that 74 and 48 needed to remain affordable, and then 52 could be like other purposes as determined by the town. I never got a final confirmation if I interpreted that correctly, and definitely not a lawyer, but I think maybe that's something that we can just get a final confirmation from Kathleen again,
So I'm super visual. Is there any way we can just pull the map up and you just show us which 2 per the settlement right now are saying must remain?
Yep.
So I can get do you guys off the top of your head remember which lots were which?
I don't.
Okay.
1 second.
I think the one at the bottom of the hill, the sort of best one.
That's the market rate?
That's the market rate, I believe.
That's a bummer.
Oh my gosh, where is this going all over? It's 5. Yeah.
Yeah, 52.
This is 52,
So
number 5. 74 is 95. And 48,
So 74 and 48 were the ones that were to remain.
16.
Is 48 the one that's tough to build
Yes. 52 is the one for more general,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
open-ended interpretation, and 40.
Yeah, so 48's the difficult one, the tough slope.
on? Can we flip those around
Sorry, there we go.
in terms of which ones are restricted?
Well, that's
I
what
mean, they're ours.
That's what she's looking. Well, the settlement
Yeah,
calls out that 2 must remain. but calls out which ones must remain. So she needs to double check if we can.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that 52 can't be.
That's right.
That we can make all of them
Yeah.
restricted.
I mean,
Yes.
I think
But I think
my
the
suggestion is
sweetener-
we throw everything in and say, give us your best
Right.
option, and we're gonna give you flexibility. We would strongly prefer to have all be, deed restricted.
However, this one could be market rate depending on your proposal. Or,
Yeah,
Yeah. Preference, we just write the RP like preference will go to the developer that can,
right.
make all
all
three of them.
three.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
And if we don't get a proposal for all three, then we don't. All right, just so everybody knows, I have a hard stop at 10 minutes from now. I'm gonna pick up my kid for basketball.
Okay. What does that look like? Just next steps then? Do we wait till we have more of the committee, or do we just?
So the settlement checklist has been complete. Obviously, the closing documents have been presented. The road acceptance process will be finalized as of spring. I don't know if the road needs to be officially accepted by the town before the ZBA is approached. But I think that I would recommend I go back to Kathleen and just confirm that our understanding is correct. And I can also just ask her, where we're thinking of engaging now, having this conversation with the ZBA. Do we need to wait until all of it, everything is finalized? Because with the road acceptance process, it's not just the road, it's deeds for anything that is going to be the town's. So easements and conveyances and all that jazz. So I don't know if somehow that's going to hamstring you all until May. I would think if yeah. So I'll confirm with her if it might be too early to have that conversation with ZBA. But I mean, I think it's always good to at least start to have it anyway, and we can say.
Well, I'm just saying of like the buildable time of year, right? Like the more information we push out earlier, so if people wanted to start in spring or summer, they
Right.
have that opportunity. But if we wait till spring or summer, then they might
It's another
push
year.
it off a whole another year.
Yeah.
I think it's really optimistic to think anything could start this year.
That's what I am. That's my middle name.
Not to change the subject too much from this, but what's going on with 59 Pleasant Street?
They have been delayed in pulling permits. Last time I spoke to them, which was a few months ago, they said they were going to be pulling in early 2025. So,
Okay.
and same thing with 116 Upton.
Okay.
So, well, I'm keeping my eye on both of those because obviously the clock is ticking for them
Yeah,
to do that.
they've been quiet.
Yeah.
Well, it's early 2025. Just
Yeah.
like, hey, how's it going? Email.
Yep.
Do you need me to
Nudge,
help you or?
nudge them. Yes.
And that might be another thing. I don't know if that goes into outreach or development, but just general support of the project at public meetings and to the extent that they need it from us to talk up the need for affordable housing. Okay. Anything else on either development or funding?
I feel like we have a lot of goals.
Yeah, we got a lot. We don't need any more.
And I like stuff. Don't get me wrong, but like.
Yes. All right. So I think the next step is to, why don't you and I work together to put this into a written form that's digestible for the full committee, and we can circulate these and we can vote on acceptance of these goals. And going forward, we'll start getting them onto agendas and creating action plans. We can talk about whether or not subcommittees are needed for some of this stuff at the next meeting.
Speaking of our communication, though, once we accept these goals, can we send them to the select board?
Yeah.
Because they are our appointing authority and just let them know what we're up to and
Sure,
that just
absolutely.
helps start that ball rolling.
Absolutely.
Cool.
So in the next discussion with the more full committee, I'd like to talk about timeframes because some of these will be short.
Yep.
Some will be longer term and also priority.
Yeah.
It's clear to me that we're not going to be able to get through all this, so I'd like some sense of sort of what do we want to focus on short and long term.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else on goals? All right, hearing none, that comes to the end of our agenda. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I think we had meeting minutes, didn't we?
We already proved those, didn't
Oh,
we?
we did, we did.
Oh,
Never
I'm
mind.
sorry.
Did we not?
No, we did. I've just lost my mind.
Oh, okay.
We did everything, but
I'm sorry. There was I didn't catch it when we were talking about we're doing the High Point update, but the vote for the abatement.
Oh,
Yeah, I think Amber worded it as vote should be taken to request an abatement of the third and fourth quarter real estate taxes for those lots, but you have till Feb. Well, that doesn't matter because
let's just do it tonight.
you
Yeah.
do it tonight. Yep.
I will entertain a motion to what Fiona just read.
Request
Yes. Request to
an abatement of
yeah,
the
the abatement.
three and
Four.
four taxes for those lots. So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion made and seconded. Do I hear any discussion on the motion? Hearing none by roll call. All in favor? Matt?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Prisby, aye. All right, motion passes.
Thanks, Fiona. Thanks, Amber.
Anything else?
No.
All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, again, all in favor by roll call. Matt?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Prisby, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. It was a good meeting.